Happy Halloween, boys.
Yeah, baby.
Scary, scary, scary.
Isn't it dumb how November it is right now?
I mean,
It came in hot. Not a fan.
I don't know if it came in hot where you are. It's a little chilly outside for me.
Ryan, bump you up just a little bit on your microphone. You're here with us. I am Fred Soul alongside me, Ryan Lavarnway, and Van Nunley. This is Going Oppo. And the thing that I am most excited about in the world of baseball right now is that I get an extra day, I guess. Is that how rain delays work? Does it count as another one?
No, I want it yesterday. I need it yesterday. I can't wait another day.
I mean, if anything, people got to trick or treat with their families and not miss the World Series.
Oh,
fine.
Okay, you're making an excellent point. Because Halloween is built for multiple days. I've had this talk on social media recently where it's all these people complaining that Halloween should only be a Saturday and it's for something this for the schedule. Number one, like every parent I know has given up on trick-or-treating. They're lazy as lazy gets. It's only about trunk-or-treating. They don't put the effort into going through the neighborhood anymore, but they're the first one to complain whenever no one's coming to their door. Like there's a weird ironic to this that I'm a very big fan of.
So
it's just too dangerous out there, Freddie. You can't go out in the streets anymore. They're putting fentanyl in the candy.
No, they're not. Janice, no, they're not. Everything's fine.
Janice, not Karen, huh?
Yeah. It's a new day, brother.
So in our neighborhood, everyone puts a little table out on the street so the kids can do the parade and you can go to every house, but you don't have to actually ring a doorbell.
Pit stop style. I like it.
Yeah.
I do like that. And also because I have a thing about Ring cameras, like or whatever. It doesn't Ring in theory, it doesn't have to be Ring proper. But I have a thing about Ring cameras because I don't want to be on everyone's Ring camera. Also the one I turn the notifications off. Like the only time I know is when if Amazon texts me and is like, hey, there's a package, I'm like, cool. If it's not there, then I check it. Otherwise, I don't check Ring. I'm weirded out by knowing what's going on around my home.
I don't have a Ring camera. I have a dog. That's my Ring camera.
Yeah.
He barks when people walk up to the front door. It's really cheap, really easy. All I got to do is feed him and give him scratchums. It's a beautiful thing.
Our dog barks whenever anyone is anywhere within sight. So it kind of backfires on the just alerting me to people at the door scenario.
Not acceptable. Friend of the show, Josh Suchon, will join us today. He's the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. He'll be with us about halfway through. We're going to talk to he about his broadcast career. We're going to talk to he about where he got and how he got there, being the voice of the AAA affiliate for the Colorado Rockies, the Albuquerque Isotopes, and his journey. He hosted pregame for the Dodgers for a long time, worked alongside Ben Scully. Just has a really good story, boys. So we're going to talk to him. We're going to put that up a little bit against Ryan and your story coming up through minor league baseball and what is the number? 45, 50, 60 different broadcasters who have called you. Is it that high?
Yeah, we might be closer to 100.
Isn't that crazy?
Ooh.
It's Lavarn way. That's how you have to pronounce it to him. I'm doing the terrestrial show last night, boys. Van and I host a program called 2 Men Over in Albuquerque. Van was not on the program yesterday, but I was doing it with our third co-host, Robert Gibson. And as we're hosting the show, some friends of the show come up to us and they say, hey, World Series canceled. Like we're in the middle of the broadcast. And I'm like, canceled? Like, is this there's terrorism? There's what is going on? And you can't go to break or whatever, right? So I'm like, all right, let's grab a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about anyway. It's just rain delay, boys. So I was about a 10 for about 2 minutes last night on the broadcast. Rain delays on holidays. I'm excited for the extra day. Does a lot for the premise, though, right? Does a lot for pitching. Does a lot for matchups. Does a lot for the city of Philadelphia. Ryan, you have been there. How does weather and rain affect how a team approaches, and what do you do with that found time off?
What I think it's going to do for the Phillies is the fact that we've been talking about the weakness and the lack of depth in their starting pitching. You're going to get their 1-2 punch in game 4 and 5 again. You're only going to have to go one game in between. That being said, games 1 and 2, that 1-2 punch that's supposed to be untouchable, they both gave up 5 runs. So
very
what you're also going to see is, what you're also going to see is after they pitch in games 4 and 5, Now you're going to have bullpen games. If we get to game 6 and 7, where all the money's on the line, you're going to have that bullpen. You're going to see how deep they really are. And we're going to see a lot of answers to a lot of the questions that people have about how deep is the Phillies pitching and can they compete with the Astros?
Yeah, I mean, the way that Phillies 1-2 punch got hit that hard, it doesn't bother me as an Astros fan that we're going to see them earlier. I mean, 5 runs a pop, right? It doesn't bother me at all. But I mean, it's all plays into the Astros' hands as well, because they got 5 starters that they could run out that are just one tiny step below Justin Verlander. And Justin Verlander got shelled anyways with the 5-run lead. So this is one of those beautiful playoff moments where you just throw your hands up and you're like, statistics don't matter. Justin Verlander was 101-0 with a 5-run lead until game 1 of the World Series. That is ridiculous.
He kind of can't handle those moments, which is a weird thought. Like, how do you get to the absolute top tier? Like, there's no rungs left on the ladder for Justin Verlander, right? Like, he has done it at every level, found success, not just professionally, personally, all the things. And then whenever the lights get so very bright, for some reason, there's like a collapse. And I guess I don't know what that moment, maybe I would, maybe if someone handed me the Tonight Show, maybe I wouldn't be able to handle it. Or maybe I was asked to walk out in front of WrestleMania and tell everyone welcome. Maybe I would collapse. Ryan, what about that spotlight is so significantly different? Like, what about getting to that top tier and just having a change of performance?
I don't know. I'm not ready to throw the towel in on Justin Verlander in that regard just yet. I still have the utmost respect for him. I still believe that he can do it. To me, it's a matter of, is he that much more focused than everyone else the rest of the year? Whereas now when the lights are brighter, everyone's catching up in the focus. Everyone's catching up in the intensity. The other thing is, we talk about baseball, superstition, jinxes. I was watching that game live, obviously, as we all were. As soon as they put up that stat, Justin Verlander gets 5 runs. He's undefeated. He's never been given. I was like, they shouldn't have done that. I don't know who's in charge of putting up those jinx stats, but it feels like every single time it blows up in our face.
And we're going to cut to the stat guy back in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I was talking to a Dodgers fan last night, and we were just trying to release our demons. Like, my Verlander is his Kershaw, and we're just like lamenting all of the horror stories of our stud pitchers in the playoffs. I was like, please just give our ace. We give him so much money. He is so good all year. Just do the thing. Do the thing. I mean, we saw it all playoffs. Scherzer got shelled. Yu Darvish got shelled. Like, all of these aces, when the lights are the brightest, they get hit unlike they've ever been hit before. It is mind-blowing.
And then on the other side, like, of the plate, like Jose Altuve, who has done nothing all postseason, then comes to life. And that's the snap. Like, he is going to end up being like just white hot, like sexy for the rest of the World Series. Like, there's no chance he will swing and miss a ball the rest of the series because he had this one little snap. But pitchers don't really have like that, like breakout, like I'm out of a slump thing, unless I don't recognize it correctly, Ryan.
Well, we talked about this.
Well, hold on. One fun fact real quick. Since the fan ran onto the field and gave Jose Altuve a hug, he is 7 for 15. So the guy who ran onto the field, I won't say his name, I'm giving him credit, but he deserves a lot of credit.
No,
that hug snapped him out of his slump. He's banned from every MLB stadium for eternity, but it works because now Jose Altuve's out of his slump.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Going Oppo, encouraging fans to get their players hot by committing felonies.
Yes, thank you.
With the net now, how do you even get on the field?
Oh, that's a good point.
You go under the net.
Yeah, there's a couple openings in case security needs to get out there. There's like a fire hazard, maybe.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Box kata.
Yeah, things I didn't know. Ryan, what is that snap out moment for pitchers? How do you know when a pitcher knows that he's bigger than the moment that has maybe held him down a little bit?
I don't know. I mean, we talked about this with Altuve last week. I don't know that it was a snap moment. I don't know that it was just the World Series. He had those 2 hits to the right side. in the NL or ALCS where he kind of got jammed, he got a hit, he kind of hit it over the first baseman, a little blooper, he got a hit. That's the type of thing that gets a hitter hot, right? That's baseball. You go cold, you go hot. He just happened to get hot at the right time for this season. But as a pitcher, it's such a feel thing, right? If you get too excited, your heartbeat is racing too much, you lose the feel of your fingertips. And it's such a skill position where they're launching balls at 97, 98 miles per hour. If they can't feel their fingertips, right now that there's no stick, there's no pine tar on the ball, if they do get too jazzed, if they do get too hyped, that's when they start losing a feel for their pitches. You leave it over the middle, these hitters in the World Series, they're going to punish you.
That's exactly it right there, Ryan. If you leave it over the middle, professional baseball players will hit the hell out of a baseball. Like Justin Verlander, 9 up, 9 down, 5-run lead, and he had like 3 bad pitches, and they all got smacked to Round Rock. It's and he was pitching fantastic.
And so what do we got on Dusty Baker leaving him in? Like it's easy to play armchair quarterback after the game, but the last time a 5-run lead had been blown in the World Series was Dusty Baker. But I don't blame him, because until those 3 runs were given up in the 5th, you got to ride your horse, right? That's your guy. That's one of the best histories, or one of the best pitchers in the history, right? Definitely of this generation. How do you go pull him before you give him a chance to get the first win he's ever had in the World Series? You got to give him that option out of respect.
Yeah, I completely agree. Fred, you want to take this one? You're about to chime in.
Well, no, you know how I feel about Dusty Baker. So
Sure.
I've never
You
been
love him, the inventor of the high five. What a dude.
I think, because I watched him in the NL Central for all those years, right? For all those years, day-to-day baseball, I get it. I get that he relates to the guys. I get that they trust him. He's all those kind of cliches, inventor of the high five, all those team things. But I just don't know him to make the decision he needs to make. Because to me, in the World Series, and I recognize what Ryan is saying, you want to give Verlander an opportunity, but you trust yourself as a manager. What is Dusty Baker, 75? Like, Dusty Baker's been around the game of baseball for 50 years. Like, you have to, like, don't go to Verlander and say, because there's not a single starter in Major League Baseball that's going to say, oh yeah, I'm done, Skip. Like, pull me. Like, I'm garbage. Like, not, like sure. I can't be out here. Like, they're not going to go Ron Artest joining the Kings and then be like, I give up. Like, what they're going to do is say, no, I got this. Let me get the next guy. Let me do that thing. And to me, that's kind of the biggest downfall of Dusty Baker, is allowing him to allow players to kind of dictate what they do out there. So to me, the one part of managing that you have to do in those high impact moments, he does not do well. And that is, that's put me very low on him.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? With being a playoff manager, because what upsets me more, instead of leaving a guy like Verlander in for longer, is that over tinkering, where you pull the guy out with 3 2/3 innings because you got a hot reliever coming out, and you start working your matchups way too early. I mean, and there's a reason that these guys are stud starting pitchers, because they're better than the bullpen. They can do it better. They can do it longer. They can do it for more reps. It upsets me more that they yank guys early and they do double switches early and they just over tinker with their lineup instead of staying with what got you all the way that deep into the playoffs. So as far as Dusty's concerned, I know he doesn't have that trophy yet. He's never hosted the trophy with the team that he manages, but I respect a manager more trusting your guys and letting them do their thing instead of over tinkering.
Yeah, remember when Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell a couple of years ago in the World Series, right? And Snell was dominating, and they ended up losing the game. They ended up losing the series. And even Wendy's Burger Company was trolling him for pulling him to the whole world was like, why did you do that? If he goes out there and gets Verlander when he's only given up 2, the whole world, and something goes sideways, the whole world is questioning him forever. Everyone's blaming him now for Verlander not having a World Series win. I think you got to leave him out there. He ended up pulling him before they lost the lead, and it was really just one swing of the bat that gave up those next 3 runs. So I think I'm with Dusty on leaving Verlander in, because Verlander's your guy.
Let's say Dusty's walking in the mound, right? And you're behind the plate, Ryan. Do you want to have insight in that conversation? Do you try to catch Dusty before he's going to the mound? Do you, hey, come to me for like, let me be part of this conversation? Or is that pitcher manager only?
No, I think the catcher has a good insight on how the ball is coming out of his hand because nobody can see it the way that the catcher sees it. Not even the camera, right? The camera's in center field. You're not seeing the follow through. You're not seeing the carry. You're not seeing the way the batters react as much from that angle. I'd say the catcher even more than the pitcher, right? Because the pitcher has that competitive nature. The pitcher has that, no, I feel great. No, I always think I'm the best one out there. I've had this relationship with managers, especially like in the Olympics. Hey, how's he look? How's he looking from your angle? What do you think? Does he have one more? But in that moment, like Dusty's not going to stop by the catcher's box on the way to the mound,
right?
And be like, hey, what do you think? In the biggest moment with the brightest lights, that decision is why Dusty has that job. That's his decision.
So then, let's say you're not in World Series aside, whatever moment it is, let's say you're not necessarily on the same page with the manager and you're looking at your pitcher and you're like, he doesn't necessarily have it to the degree that he normally has it with pitch A and pitch B. Are you leaning then as you're calling a game on pitch C? Are you leaning then on a little creativity behind the plate to help this or avoid travesty? Or do you not feel that you have to seize control that deeply?
No, that's exactly right. You have to play the game with your eyes. You go into every single game with a scouting report. You go in with a game plan. But as a human being, you're not going to be the same every time. The pitcher's not going to have the same stuff every time, and the hitters aren't going to react to that stuff the same every time. So that's why you play the game. And if you're not playing with your eyes and you're not trying to see what you're seeing, then that's the problem.
Not to railroad you, Van, so I'm sorry, but last one. So then, so let's say you do have a guy opposite of you, and he's in his own head. He's got like a moment going on. It's the baseball yips or whatever. What is your go-to line? What is your go-to like punch in? Like, what is the thing where you get a guy to snap just back to normal? Do you have that in your repertoire as a catcher?
Yeah, say, hey, Kate's going to make you sleep on the couch, Justin. That would be my snap out right there.
That's a good one. That might work depending on. So I don't know Justin Verlander personally, but it's different for different guys. So sometimes I can use Daniel Bard as an example, and this is an example of something that didn't work for me. When he was losing it in 2012, when he was getting the yips, developing it, and it was just coming out. He was trying everything he could, right? Like I would go to the mound and between games we'd be talking about, I'd be like, hey, relax, like slow your heart rate down, take a couple deep breaths. That didn't work. Then the next day he'd be like, hey, Jason Varitek used to punch me in the chest really hard and say, let's go, bitch. and so maybe you need to get me fired up. So I felt silly doing it, but he wanted it. So I gave him a punch when he got to the mound, kind of hard. And I said, let's go, bitch. Because that's what he asked for. That didn't work for him. There's other guys that if you make them laugh or you change their mind, other guys you pump them up, be like, oh, this guy can't touch you. Just stay in your zone. Other guys, you give them a little mechanical adjustment. So that's where building a relationship between the catcher and the pitcher really pays off, is knowing a guy, knowing what he needs in that moment, because for each guy, it really is individual.
Oh, I love everything about that. I was thinking as you're explaining, I'm thinking of that moment from Major League when they're all at the mound, and they're like, what's going on here? It's talking about wedding gifts, talking about and I'm like, these aren't real conversations on the mound, right? Like no one's out there, but is that the thing, right? You're talking about catering on the mound?
Yeah. So you're confusing two movies. Major League, the mound visit is when Dorn, the third baseman, who they fought before, up and go strike this mother.
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking Bull Durham.
You're thinking Bull Durham, and he's like, candlesticks are a nice gift.
Love everything about that. Speaking of outside of the mound, it was your first Halloween yesterday, Ryan, with your brand new baby. Aww. How much fun was that for you and your family? How much fun was it to set up your collapsible table outside the house and kind of introduce you and your loved ones to everyone in your community?
Oh yeah, it was really fun. We dressed up my daughter, who's 4 months old now, and my dog, both as little dinosaurs.
Oh.
And me and my wife were the original cast of Jurassic Park.
Important demarcation.
Oh, God, I love that.
I wanted to be Mr. Handsome from the new movies, but I didn't have the right outfit. And I really didn't have the right hat for the Jurassic Park like safari hat. I had like an old wicker or cowboy hat from a previous costume. So I am specifying that it was the original cast. And if you check out my Instagram stories, I put the original picture we were going for because all my neighbors thought I was Woody from Toy Story.
Oh God, that's funny.
Me and my lady own the Jurassic Park outfit because we previously went to like oh my gosh, guys, not to give you the lamest story. We had to travel to Portland for like a safari adventure thing for her girlfriend's 30th birthday. So we show up Jurassic Park style we were spot on. So I mean, I could have just sent you that thing or whatever. I would have got it to you. I'm pulling up Ryan's social media right now. Van, you had quarantine Halloween.
Well, I mean, corporate COVID quarantine. I tested negative. This will be my third day negative, but you know how corporations go and they have special rules. And one of the rules is I can't go into the office. I have to work remote. And then the boys had a live remote every Monday at our favorite sports bar here in Albuquerque. And I couldn't go there, even though I tested negative twice. And we had a 3-way costume. The Dudley Boys from the WWF, WWE. I don't know a lot about it. I'm not the wrestling fan that Fred and our other host Robert is, but those two guys were dressed up as the Dudley Boys at our favorite sports bar, Howie's here in Albuquerque, and I was dressed as the third Dudley Boy, doing the show right here from my house, right here where I'm sitting right now. And then I went out to another competing bar, and I was a lone Dudley Boy.
I got it right there for you, just so everyone is
so good.
Aware of this look that we created
So good.
to make that thing happen. Ryan, do you put pictures of your family on Instagram? I don't want to put anything up here, but don't need to be.
Yeah. I did it on my story though, not a post yet.
Okay, I won't be able to find it then. The last one I have is okay. So the last one for Ryan on his social media is he has the have you seen the Spirits Halloween thing, Van?
Sure.
Okay. So he has, I'm gonna get this up here for you. He has the I'm guessing it's the Lavarn way, but also it's just like the journeyman catcher one. So here we go.
Oh, I saw that. I love it so much. It's so good.
Yeah, I never thought about how I should have had a sponsorship by a suitcase company until I created that post. Right?
That's so smart. Sammy, Swami, Swimmy.
I actually use an Away suitcase. So if anyone from Away is listening to this podcast, I'm already using your product. I love it. Let's link up.
It's just I feel like with your last name, there's like Away, Ryan Lavarn Away. There's something there. We would find it quickly. Whenever we get back, we'll be joined by our friend Josh Suchon, the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes. We're going to talk about broadcasting in minor league baseball. We're going to talk about the journey he took to get to his place. And also we'll recap games 1 and 2 of the World Series, which occurred over the weekend. And I like to talk about a lot. I like to talk about ratings. And since Josh is a broadcaster, we will hit on how the World Series has bounced back, boys. It's got more viewers than it's had in like 5 years. Thank you for tuning in to Going Oppo, and we'll be back after this. On the return and joining us as Van has stepped away, but he'll be right back. Friend of the show, friend in real life, Josh Suchon. Welcome, brother. How are you?
Thanks for letting me join you guys. Ryan, nice to meet you via technology. This is good. This is fun. What do we got?
So we're going to lead off, my friend, like that baseball talk. We're going to lead off with just how dang impressive World Series Game 1 was in the ratings, boys. Highest ratings it's had in 5 years. People are tuning in on the regular, and I think it's difficult for us because we live in such this world of being tuned into the game and being a part of every single pitch of every single major league game out there. But the layman is back. Like everyday fan of sport is back in the world of baseball. Does that bring joy to you guys? Does that bring joy to you, Josh? Are you excited about the World Series hitting with the populace?
Well, I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. So if other people are excited by it and want to watch it, and that gives me more people to talk baseball with, then that makes me very thrilled. I've always thought that ratings can be very deceptive nowadays because there's so many different ways to consume all types of sports. But that's still the way that we do it. We still have these Nielsen ratings, and it's still a barometer of how many people are watching and how many people care. And it's far, far from the best measure, but it's roughly kind of the same measure that it was 5 years ago. And so that's good to know that a lot of people care about Bryce Harper and Alex Bregman and Dusty Baker and trash cans maybe. And, and we'll see what happens from there.
People want to watch the Astros lose. I'm sure when Houston and Philly made it, like the common consensus of the front office MLB people were like, oh my God, we could have had New York, LA. Oh my God, we could have had New York, New York. Now we got Philly and Houston. But the consensus of hatred for the Houston Astros, I believe, is driving up viewership for the World Series.
Well, and the games have been so good, especially game one was such great baseball, such a great comeback that nobody saw coming.
Not a fan.
I'm glad that more people are getting to watch it because it's great baseball and it's fun to watch.
Josh, whenever you're tuned into the game, you've seen a lot of these guys, right? You've seen a lot of these guys throughout minor league. You've seen a lot of these guys perform and then elevate to the next level. What's your connection to watching the big game, Josh? Do you watch it differently? Is it not just a fan experience? Does it feel like a friend experience at times?
One of the things I like to do is when someone makes the major leagues, especially when they're really good. So someone like Alex Bregman or someone like Kyle Tucker, and say like, okay, that player went against the Isotopes when I was broadcasting the game. What did I think of that player at the time? Did I think that player was going to be a marginal major leaguer? Did I think that player had superstar written all over him? And so it's always fun for me to kind of compare and contrast upon my scouting hat. And more often than not, I'm wrong as a scout. And that's why I stick to broadcasting, because it is so difficult. But a case like Alex Bregman, he's from Albuquerque. I think I only saw him play 2 games in person. Like, you just knew that he was destined for greatness. A guy like Kyle Tucker was interesting because at first it was, okay, Preston Tucker was his older brother, and I remember Preston, and this guy doesn't wear batting gloves, and he has this really beautiful swing, but is it too long? And he just seems to do everything so effortless. Is that because he doesn't care, or is that just because he's so good at it? And then the more and more that you watched him play, you realize this guy's really good. And this guy has a different motor when he needs to have a different motor. And this guy's swing is just gorgeous. And then he connects on a couple, and you go, okay, this guy's going to be a major leaguer for a really long time. And then the Astros bullpen, well, it feels like everybody in that bullpen just dominated my par Isotopes at some point within the last 5 years.
Talking about guys like Alex Bregman or Kyle Tucker that you mentioned, Josh, like you come up and you see them, you're like, oh, okay, he's got it. When Kyle Tucker hits a ball, it sounds different. Ryan, like throughout your baseball journey, have there been a handful of guys where you're like, oh, when he hits the ball, it just sounds different?
Yeah, you definitely notice those guys, and it's you don't really see it in BP. It's in the game, and it's even when they hit ground outs, it's even when they hit line drives. It's not necessarily the majestic home run that catches your attention. It's the, oh my God, he just got out. How did someone even field that? Why were you willing to put your body in front of that ball? That was 190 miles per hour at your face.
Josh, you've been obviously a part of broadcasting for, oh my gosh, are you in your 20th year? No, you're not.
No, well, it's been a long time. Well, we don't need to count the years.
Okay. So you've been part of a broadcast at some level for some time now. But as you've come up, and it's obviously here at AAA, and you did stuff with the Dodgers forever, and we'll tell your story here in a little bit. Is there a guy that jumped off that page to you as well? Because I know you've heard the game in so many different, in the headphones is so intimate, and there's a way to listen. Is there a guy where afterwards you were like, oh, this is what the sound of baseball is? Do you have that like auditorially in your memory?
Yeah, well, there's 2 that come to mind right away. The first was George Springer. And Springer was the type where I remember just watching him do everything on the field. And then the other thing that stood out to me is that there was players on the Isotopes who came out of the clubhouse early and sat in the dugout to watch Springer take batting practice. When you're watching an opponent take batting practice, that means that you really are something special that other guys want to watch. So that's one. And then the other was Noah Syndergaard. Syndergaard was actually this 2-way phenom against us. I saw him hit one of the longest home runs in this ballpark's history. I saw him nearly decapitate a pitcher. He actually was at the plate with a chance for the cycle as a pitcher. Yes. He actually got 4 at-bats, which is crazy enough as itself. He had a chance at a cycle at the plate, and then he was just dominating on the mound with the fastball, the curve, the slider, everything. Those are the two where you're just in awe, and I remember just thinking, this guy's not going to be in the minor leagues for very much longer. I'm just going to enjoy and appreciate everything this person does because he ain't going to be here very long.
Josh, talking about the sounds of the game. First off, you do an amazing job here being the voice of the Isotopes, and Albuquerque is lucky to have you. You're a world of talent. So thank you so much for being here.
I'd put you on a billboard if I could.
You want to get on our billboard?
You want to get on our billboard?
Yeah, but talking about the sounds of the game, one of your biggest skill sets is you let the game breathe. Like you hang an extra microphone out of the booth to capture those extra little bit of baseball sounds. Where did this come from? Where did this skill set of not having to talk over the game? Is this a learned thing, or is it like inherent in your love of baseball?
A little bit of everything. I think that's what you should do. And if you're not doing that, then you are overwhelming the listener if you keep talking constantly. I think that it's actually an advantage of being a one-person booth is your partner is actually the crowd mic. When there's two people that are talking, then it's kind of awkward if neither one of them talks for more than a second or two, and it can be overwhelming for the listener. So I think that it's really special. What it makes it awkward when a game got rained out and you're playing a doubleheader the next day and there's 50 people in the stands, and then the board op says into your ear, "You still there?" Yes, I'm trying to let it breathe. I'm trying to let you can really hear the umpire say strike or ball. But I mean, I think that's beautiful. In fact, I think it was our last game of the season. And you start thinking about like, what am I going to miss? And at one point I even said, this is what I'm going to miss. And I turned up the crowd mic a little bit more because there's just something about hearing a crowd, just that buzz that's in the air. And, maybe the organist plays something and then the crowd responds from that and keeps going even after the organist has stopped. And I just think that those sounds of baseball, I feel like I'm fortunate enough where I can remember when every baseball game was not on TV and I had to listen on the radio, and how magical it was to let your mind drift to what might be happening. And you have this voice that's describing it, and then you can hear these other things that are happening in the background. Now with everything on TV, you see it, but there's still something mystical about listening and hearing, but not being able to see everything.
I think when you have that crowd noise, it's an energy that you can feel. And in the dugout, we can feel that too. When you don't have a good crowd and the fans aren't into it, you can feel the lack. You can feel that hole where it should be, because baseball is better played in a packed stadium when the fans are into it. That's the best experience for the fans, for the players, for the listeners, for the watchers. That's what baseball is all about. It's supposed to be shared. And when you can share, Josh, when you share that with your listeners, I'm sure everyone can feel it, and I'm sure it makes the experience that much greater for them.
Ryan, do you remember the loudest you ever played a game, like the ballpark, or what was going on, and sort of how that made you feel differently when it was that loud?
Well, the World Series
pull up that T-shirt, Ryan.
in Boston was definitely the loudest, and that was out of control. But as far as regular season, those Red Sox-Yankees battles, when both teams are good and you get sellout stadiums in Yankee Stadium, 55, 60,000 people, you feel the noise. And also, if you do something good as the opponent, you feel the silence. It's a powerful feeling.
Ryan and Josh, when you guys first walk into a ballpark on game day, or maybe it's the first time you walk into a ballpark overall, do you find like the field? Do you find like that quiet in the middle so that you do have the juxtaposition versus when everything is amped up and it's at a 10 or an 11? Is there a level of importance for that for you guys?
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, Ryan. You go first.
The getting out onto a stadium, whenever I get to a field that I've never been to for the first time, finding the hallways and the staircases to get to the dugout is always something I like to do early, because my recurring nightmare is that I'm late for the game. So I want to know how to get there.
Yeah.
But you go out to the field, you look around, it feels good, right? Being on a baseball field is my favorite place to be in the whole world. But then by the time batting practice is happening, there's always music playing. There's always something going on. So going out there early and maybe walking on the grass barefoot and like getting grounded or whatever, it's peaceful. It's meditative. Being on the baseball field it's just the only place that I'd ever choose to be.
One of my least favorite questions is when someone says, well, what time do you have to be at the game? Because I think, like, you mean, what time do I get to show up at a ballpark? You know, especially day one of a series. I want to arrive early because my recurring nightmare is that the equipment didn't make it, or the equipment doesn't work, or there's something wrong with the internet, or there's something wrong with the technology that's going to prevent me from doing my job. So I want to get everything set up as fast as I can. I want to make sure that I'm connected. Okay, that part is like, okay, now 50% of my stress is gone. And like Ryan said, I do like it when it is quiet and I can walk around a ballpark. And sometimes I want to walk around the warning track. I want to know, okay, how does the field look differently from here? Is the ball going to bounce over the wall a little bit easier from this part in the ballpark? Where can you rob a home run? How hard is it to rob a home run? I like looking at the different angles of the ballpark. I love what you said, Ryan, about just how special it is when it's quiet and then it starts to get louder and then it starts to get louder and then it kind of like builds to it. But, you know, for me, I like to watch batting practice from the field. I also like to watch it from upstairs, especially if it's my first time in a ballpark. I want to be able to judge fly balls from where I'm going to be broadcasting the game, in addition to judging them from down on the field, just so that I can get a feel so that I don't embarrass myself and go into a home run call that doesn't happen.
You guys both kind of spoke on loving your job and showing up early and doing what it takes to do your job well. You guys are on different ends of the baseball spectrum in a way. What's that special moment when you get to the field, whether it's before or preparing or during the game? That's that chef's kiss moment, that come back every time rejuvenated moment for each of you guys.
Well, I think a lot of the players have started getting into this grounding, the barefoot on the grass, or a lot of the players are calling this GOATA now. Have you heard of this GOATA movement? It's greatest of all time athlete. And I am closer to WOTA than I am to GOATA in my movement pattern. But it's you, when I get to the field, whether it's the road players or the home players, there's almost always like a group of 2 to 5 players barefoot walking around the outfield or crawling like a baby, I swear to God, in the outfield, because they believe that crawling is the basis of all proper movement. But you're on the grass. It's almost like you have a little picnic at work before the game. And there's this gratitude and this feeling of, I can't believe I get to go have a picnic at work, or I can't believe I get to do this and be in a beautiful stadium and spend my time doing this before then I get to play in front of thousands of people.
I've definitely noticed more and more guys during batting practice going out barefoot. Notice more and more guys doing yoga out on the outfield. I remember a couple of years ago when Joe Beimel was attempting his comeback, and he went out to center field and took off his shirt and get some sun, and he did his meditating out in straightaway center field. My favorite moment is actually when the players take the field to start the game, because most of my stress is related to, did my equipment get connected? Is it here? Who's the guest for my pregame show? Is the pregame show timed out properly? Not too long, not too short. Do I have enough information? Am I prepared for the game? Do I know enough about the starting pitchers? Have I talked to people and kind of getting all these tidbits? And then once the players take the field, it's like, all right, now I just do it, right? There was all of this stress, and maybe stress isn't the right word, because I'm not stressed about it. I just have very high standards for myself. And I just want to make sure that I'm as prepared as I can be. And then once they take the field, they're running out there, the fans cheer, there's some music that's being played, and it's like, all right, now it's showtime. All of the preparation is done. All of the anxiety is done. Just, it's time to have fun.
You guys are both kind of talking about like a zen to the game and like an approach. And hey, and by the way, if I could go back 20 years and change my career path, for me personally, it would not be sports broadcasting. It would be sports like mental health. I would get into like sports psychology, because to me that's so incredible. And as we're sitting here in 2022 and we're talking about these approaches, back in 92, literally Pedro Serrano was the punchline in a movie for this same kind of like approach to the game. Josh, I think, when did you start writing, Josh? 96, 97? Is that when you started in the Bay Area? So you've seen a lot of baseball over your years. Talk about the evolution of mental health and athletes, and talk about how you've seen that evolve into what I call a much healthier environment.
Let me go back to the early 90s. I remember when John Smoltz was on the big stage with the Braves, 91, 92, and there was a lot of talk about how he had worked with a sports psychologist. And it was kind of taboo, A, to work with one, and B, to admit it. And it was just not something that you normally heard on a national baseball broadcast, that someone was working with a sports psychologist. And so I remember when Steve Sachs went through his throwing thing in the 80s and how that was just a laughing stock. It was on the bloopers of, This Week in Baseball. And then you see sort of the evolution of, from the 90s to the 2000s, and more players being open about it, and more players being okay talking about it. And I think the more players that talked about it, the more players who were scared to talk about that now felt comfortable doing it, would now feel like, hey, it's okay. I can use you as a sounding board. You can use me as a sounding board, or I'm not equipped to do this, but this person is. Now teams employ, they don't call it sports psychologist. I think they call it like performance coach or something like that. I know that the Rockies have one whose primary language is English and one whose primary language is Spanish. So the Spanish speaking players can talk to someone in their native language as well. And so now it's something where, as a team, if you are not providing that for your players, you are missing out.
Yeah, they call it a mental skills performance coach, or a mental wellness coach. And I think there's still, from the player's perspective, there's still a little fear that if you show weakness, or if you show something that's not positive, it is going to get reported back to the team because that person is employed by the team. But it's moving away from that. There's definitely a level of comfort that it's growing amongst the players. And there's definitely a feeling of, this is something that can help me perform and stay healthier and stay in a better mental headspace. Because especially in the minor leagues on the way up, where 1% of the players are going to make it to their dream, it's such a grind, and there's travel, and there's lack of food, and there's lack of pay. So this is a resource that more and more people are taking advantage of, and I hope it continues in that direction.
We're sitting down with Josh Suchon, voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes, as he joins us on Going Oppo. We're talking about he and how he views the game from the broadcast booth. Josh, you wrote in the paper for like 10 years. You went to Modesto, did some stuff. You did pregame in LA for a long time. You're almost in your 10th year with the Isotopes, which is incredible. Whenever you now identify yourself professionally, are you voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes, Josh Suchon? Like the rest of it's kind of in your past? Is it when you introduce yourself, or are you solely this thing? Because Ryan right now is considering transitioning from being a Major League Baseball player to being a baseball commentator. Talk about that transition to be able to identify professionally, Josh, with where you're at.
Whenever kids ask me what I did, they don't really care about what I did. They just want to know what the path is so that they can do that. And my
first meet orbit.
And my first answer is, well, don't look at what I did, because I've bounced all over the place. I've gone from the minor leagues to a newspaper, to the minor leagues as a play-by-play, to the big leagues doing pre and post, back to the minor leagues doing play-by-play, with a whole lot of writing in the middle. I don't know what I identify. To be honest, I still think like a writer first, but I've been a broadcaster a lot longer than I've been a writer now, which still blows my mind. And I used to look back and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have spent those 10 years as a writer, because maybe I would be somewhere different as a broadcaster. But when I'm really honest with myself, I wasn't ready out of college to be a full-time broadcaster. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the voice. I didn't have the life experience. I didn't have the temperament. I needed 10 years of being able to type and press delete and backspace and rewrite. I needed the time to learn how to interview someone where it would be a terrible question and it wouldn't sound terrible because it's not being printed, right? That I could go back and take the best soundbite out of that. So now that I have gotten to this point as a broadcaster, I feel like I am better because of the time that I spent as a reporter. I feel like I still prepare like a reporter. I research like a reporter. I still do a lot of writing. I'll try to script out some of my things for the pregame show, just so that I know that I don't forget to say anything, so that I know it's concise, so that I know that I stay on time. Whenever possible, I like to give myself little cheat sheets where I can use that. So again, the reporting part of my life has shaped me in a way that's made me a better broadcaster. And I'm glad that I did that. I think it gives me an appreciation of all the different types of jobs that happen at a ballpark and what people are doing.
Josh, you're kind of like, not only are you the voice of the Isotopes, You work in the front office. You wear a lot of other hats than just being in front of the microphone when there's players on the field. I think you enhance the Isotopes experience. And with that being said, I want to segue over to you, Ryan. In your history of playing baseball, has there ever been that guy who was behind the microphone but also part of the team that really enhanced your team experience?
A lot of the times what we find in broadcasters, unfortunately, is that if they're not supportive of the team, we hear it more often. It's like, oh, this guy was talking smack about us on TV last night. Now he wants a pregame interview. So when there is I've changed. I think I've called 23 different cities a home team over the course of my career.
Wowza.
And broadcasters turn over. So maybe I've had close to 30 home broadcasters. When they are very supportive or they have a great call, and then it ends up on social media, like we all see our highlights on Instagram, like when the team posts it and there's a great home run call, those are the things that pump us up too, because the broadcasters are lending an experience for the viewer. So when we do something on the field and then we see it on TV or on ESPN or on Instagram later, we get to experience it a second time from a new perspective. So when there's a great home run call, that gets us just as hyped as it does the fan base.
Josh, have you ever had a player that you just really gelled with to whenever they did have like an enthusiastic moment, maybe you gave it like a little extra go? Maybe you were a little more there than you would have been for Johnny Pitstop who came through town.
Yeah, for sure. This is an easy one. It's Winton Bernard, and it's not just a recency bias because of last year, but Winton Bernard, we gelled in 2021 when he was basically a part-time player. And then, when he evolved to being the leadoff guy and center fielder almost every day, there was two moments that stand out the most. One was early in the season. And like sometimes you just like throw things out into the universe just because it sounds good and you hope that it happens. And so I said, well, in Winton's first at bat, he hit a double down the left field line that scored a run. And in his second at bat, he hit a double down the right field line that scored a run. So I feel like he's going to just hit one to straightaway center. What do you think? And then the next pitch, he hit one to straightaway center. And I went nuts, right? Because I called it and I called the direction. And Winton even came up to me the next day and he's like, are you psychic? He goes, not only did you call my home run, he's like, you called the direction. But in my mind, like making predictions is fun and easy because if you're wrong, no one remembers. But if you're right, then you have like these glorious moments. And then late in the season, our team, the Isotopes, had tied the overall minor league record for most Grand Slams in a season. We were one away. Bernard's at the plate. The count's 2-0, and I'm just going in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to hit it right here. And I even texted our PR guy, Forrest, and I go, next pitch, watch this. And sure enough, he did it. And when he did, like normally I stay seated. This is my broadcast booth. But when he hit it, I was up like this, and I'm like pointing. I was going nuts because just the moment of what it meant to the Isotopes, what it meant to Winton, the fact that I predicted it, like all of those things just lent to it. And that's where I remember, my heart was still racing like 2 innings later with adrenaline from that moment.
Well, not only did you predict it in the moment, you called it out ahead of time on our program.
The thing that's so interesting, Ryan, you've never played here in Albuquerque, have you?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so it's like, I don't know, 7,000 feet above the ocean. Like it's just too tall. We're too high. We're just too high. So every pop fly, like you have to almost start with and it's got to change. No, this one's actually the second base, and it's such an interesting dynamic of a ballpark, and it's beautiful. It's a cool home for baseball, and the city is fortunate to have it. Josh, with that said, and everything going on at the ballpark, by the way, a lot of remodeling. It's really cool going on right now. They're doing some stuff in the outfield. What's up next for you, Jay? What's the next thing? Is it always going to be play-by-play? Is it always going to be in the booth? Do you have aspirations for greater roles in management or leadership of baseball clubs? Are you going to become strictly a book writer? Like what's the vision and journey for you?
Well, I feel like I'm talking to my therapist here, but I didn't have to pay money and go anywhere. So this is really fun.
We could do it with a beer next time.
You know what? During the pandemic, we all had a lot of time to sit around and think about what we wanted to do next, right? Like what we really cared about in life, what we really wanted to do. And I did some flirtations with doing some other things and living in different cities. And I remember like doing some interviews for jobs that were not what my current job is. I remember finishing the interviews just going, I would be miserable doing that. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I overthinking this? If you would have asked me at age 12, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said, I want to be a baseball play-by-play announcer. And now I get to do it. So why am I overthinking this? Just enjoy the moment, enjoy life. So no, I don't want to do management. I want to do what I'm doing right now. Now, if there's an opportunity with one of those 30 teams that spends a lot of money, then yes, let's go, right? Then let's go. But I don't ever want to spend so much time thinking about something else up here that I don't appreciate what I have right here at this moment. So I can still try just as hard and want to get to the big leagues as much as I ever did, while also just being full of gratitude every day about what I get to do at AAA.
Josh, this might take a whole nother podcast all on its own, but I mean, you got to work with who I consider the GOAT, the best to ever do it, Vin Scully. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Vin and the things that you learned from him?
First of all, as great as Vin is on the mic, he's even better in person. He's an even better human being than he is a broadcaster. The number of times that I would take somebody into Vin's booth in order to meet him, and all of them are starstruck. And inevitably, they say basically the exact same thing, which is, you know, I grew up listening to you in the backyard, transistor radio. Parents want me to go to bed. I'm listening to the Dodgers. You're the voice of my blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And even though Vin has heard this millions of times, he is so appreciative and grateful when people say that. He thanks them for coming to see him, thanks them for sharing that story with them. He is just what you should be as a human being, no matter how famous you are or how good you are at your job. So that's number one. He knows the name of everybody in the press box, every usher, every security guard, every reporter, every statistician, every audio person who comes in. He knows the name of everyone. He smiles. He welcomes them to the ballpark. He's just like the ultimate host at the Vin Scully press box. So that stands out to me. And then the other thing that stands out to me is that my number one problem as a broadcaster is I have so much energy and excitement that I talk too fast, and that I'll try to weave in every single possible story and every single possible detail. And what I learned from Vin is cut 30% of that story off and just slow yourself down and make something more dramatic. And when you tell the audience something really interesting, pause and let them comprehend, let them sink in what you just told them, or maybe repeat it a second time. Like, think, when you say this great stat or this great story, and then you pause and you say, think about that. And then you repeat it again. And that really gets people focused on the most important part of the story. And so I would say that's the number one thing I learned in terms of on-air presentation.
Josh Suchon, voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes and amateur green thumb. Thank you so very much, brother.
I appreciate the invitation. This was a lot of fun. Anytime, guys.
What a dude. What a super good dude.
You're the best, Josh.
Hey. Everything about him is tremendous.
That was good advice right there. I'm gonna try to take that from Vin Scully also.
The thing about Josh is little inside baseball of this program. When Van and I first started our program, 2 Men On, we sat down with Josh right out the gate. And it was, hey, Josh, talk to us about the Albuquerque community. Talk to us about their fandom of sport. Give us every tidbit or ounce that you could possibly supply to us. And we exhausted him. He gave us I'm talking hours of understanding and dissertation and commitment and help. And for him to be part of this journey too, personally means a lot to me, Van. I don't know if that hits home with you, but just kind of just shows you the fellowship of this industry.
No, absolutely. On the clock and off the clock, he's an absolute delight. And I'll say it again, Albuquerque's lucky to have someone with his skill set and his passion for the game and his passion for the community. And it's an honor to work with him.
All right, boys, we're at the final 5. And in that final 5, we need to break down the upcoming week, which is the entirety of the World Series. This thing will be concluded by the next time we get together, currently tied at 1 apiece. And if all things go to 7, that puts the World Series up against Sunday Night Football. So I'm very excited for this one because I love Sunday night. I love any like a Sunday, a Monday, or a Thursday where I can have the football game on and the World Series game on. I don't want to be at home. I want to be out with the boys. That's how I'm taking it in. Give me your predictions for the week, boys. I'll start with mine. Number one, I'm going to have a blast. That's number one. And then number two, 3 at home. 3 at home for the Phillies is going to be tough for Astros on the road. I think I might have Philadelphia, and I don't know if it's returning to Houston. Van, what do you got?
Ooh, big ball.
I got a raspberry blowing into my microphone. That's what I got. That is ridiculous. Houston is the best team, top to bottom. They're going to dominate every single game. It doesn't matter if it's in Philadelphia. It doesn't matter if it's in Tampa. It doesn't matter if it's Spokane. It doesn't matter if it's Tuscaloosa. The Astros are the better team, top to bottom. They're better in every aspect of the game except for having one Bryce Harper. That's the only thing the Phillies are better at, is the ownership of one Bryce Harper. The starter for the next game, Lance McCullers, on 6 or more days rest in the past 2 years, he has a 1.91 ERA. He's got that squirrely curveball elbow, who's even more rested now. He is clutch in the World Series. He has a history of domination in the World Series. They're going to come out and win game 3 easily. Let's not forget that they were up 5-0 in game 1, and defying all laws of baseball and statistics, Justin Verlander blew it for the first time in his career. The Astros will dominate, and I don't think it comes back to Houston for the opposite reason.
All right, Van. I will give you that the Astros have better starting pitching. I will give you that the Astros have a better lineup. I will give you that the Astros have a better bullpen. But I think the Phillies still win because I don't think it matters. If this playoffs 2022 has shown us anything, is that the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs. In fact, the best team has almost lost every time. And that stat you just gave me about Lance, I think that might be the nail in his coffin.
Oh,
Because every time you list a stat like that, that's the jinx. That's why we play baseball. I think the Phillies take 2 out of 3 at home, go back to Houston and win it.
Ooh, I mean, Van,
Well, I might be there, so maybe knock on wood. I don't know.
outside looking in for you, Van, on this one. Also, doesn't Lance McCullers only have like 4 wins on the year? Like, what are you talking about? Overall dominant and like did he even play?
Coming back
really?
from TJ.
Well, I mean, everyone. I'm not drafting a guy unless he's already had Tommy John at this point. Like, I don't like hey, graduate high school, go get Tommy John. Like that all that makes sense to me.
No, it's not hyperbole what you're saying. That is we need to touch on this in a future podcast, but that is literally happening. Kids are getting drafted and going straight to the surgeon.
Does it feel different in the glove, Ryan?
Or
Catching
put
a guy.
yeah, you can feel the nerve through the ball.
I don't know, velocity, the whole thing. Boys, good job today. Hey, Josh was great, huh?
He's always great. It's to be expected.
No surprise there. He's a stud.
Yeah, he was a stud. All right, boys. World Series coming up. We'll be back next week. Obviously, we're sprinkling in a little innovation throughout these early episodes, right? We got the technology down. We had the live broadcast today on YouTube. Went super well, so I'm very happy about that. We're introducing the new logo next week. So the official logo is coming out. And then from there, we're gonna start really hitting the social medias and kind of creating that presence we wanted after having our feet under us. Any final words, boys?
If
Stay with us.
Yeah, if anyone's out there listening and there is something you want to see out of this podcast, something you want to hear us talk about, or guests you'd like to have us have on, leave it in the comments and we will try to give you everything you want.
Love that.
Hey, we're good and getting better, baby. Stick with us. It's going to be a better and better program every single week. And look, if it gets better than what it already is, oh my God.
Good job, everyone. GG.
See you next week.
See you next week.